the distance, holding his breath. He waited, then he saw it flash again. Something else was out there, whether or not it was the castle he sought. It was the only other object on top of the peak. Music. He resolved to walk to it and find out. More music, with the precious egg resting heavily on his back. He slowly descended through the branches of the golden tree and shimmered down to the ground. Then, hoisting the rucksack up on his shoulders, he began to walk in the direction of the mysterious flash. Time lost all meaning to Jamie as he made his way across the frozen expanse. The frigid temperatures turned his nose and fingers numb, and his eyes were wearied by the unrelenting brightness. The sun did appear to be moving through the sky, lying lower on the horizon than it had. During his morning ascent, he judged that it must be mid-afternoon, and he hoped very much that he would reach the flashing object before nightfall. There was no shelter for him otherwise. He made progress across the ice sheet without any further sightings of the white eagle as he drew closer to his destination. The softening light of the late afternoon revealed a structure that appeared larger the closer he got. It was not long before he was quite sure he had found the castle from the village. Stories, and what a palace of ice it was, as if sculpted directly from nature's towers and turrets plunged skyward in. A massive glittering shapes, possibly tall and delicate. Fortress of light reflecting all the colors in the sky. Foreign set approached, it was a mirror of orange, pink, and gold. He reached the front of the castle and paused before the drawbridge, which had been frozen in place, lowered across the moat. The moat, too, was now a river of ice, snaking smoothly around the fortress. Carefully picking his way across the bridge, he paused before an enormous pair of doors, knowing he had reached the point in his quest where he had no idea what to do next. He did the only thing he could think of: music. He knocked. The knock echoed inside the glass castle, as if it was the first knock ever had music. He could detect the sound shuddering through the interior. It sounded both infinite and brittle. He waited for what seemed like an interminable amount of time. Then slowly the door began to open. Music, shivering with the effort as if it had forgotten its purpose, the portal opened. At the bottom of this very tall door, pushing with all her might, was a young lady. She was wearing a plain white dress and a heavy cloak top that she had a fuzzy blue muffler and an extremely improbable, if practical, set of woolly earmuffs. Pairing with amazement at Jamie, she opened her mouth as if to speak, and then seemed to think better of it. Then she took a deep breath and very assertively asked him who he was exactly. Jamie did not know what he had been expecting, but a direct interrogation by the princess was certainly not it. He haltingly answered that he was from the village down the mountain, and that, if she was amenable, he would like to rescue her. Having said it, felt a little silly. Princess looked back at him dubiously. He became uncomfortably aware that he did not appear very heroic, carrying a pair of skates and a rucksack, and nothing else. Music. Then his face lit up and he said, "I brought you something special I found. May I bring it inside?" This obviously piqued her interest, and she nodded. Stepping aside with a guarded expression, she motioned to the interior hall. Jamie entered. It felt as cold inside as out. Music. He could understand why the princess was partial to earmuffs. Before he could present her with his gift, she straightened up and introduced herself. "I'm Leona," she said. He made an awkward bow, offering his own name. She nodded graciously in return. "So then, Jamie, what have you brought to me?" Jamie pulled the rucksack off his shoulder and opened the top of it, slowly drawing the glittering golden egg from its hiding place. The owner's eyes grew wide at outside of it, and she gently took it from his hands. "Foreign." He explained to her how he had come by it. Upon hearing the entire story, she said that she had seen the white eagle often flying around the mountain, and that she suspected it was the animal form of the sorcerer who had once cursed them. She related sadly, but her father had long ago left the castle in search of the man, hoping to convince him to release them. Alas, he had never returned. And so she had been here, not knowing how much time passed. Never aging all these years. Foreign expressed his regret for her unfortunate situation. But Leona appeared to be distracted by the egg in her hands. Shifting it from palm to palm, she said, "Jamie, the egg is getting warmer." As he watched, the egg began to look luminous, as if lit from within. Foreign, which had been a static canvas of gold, appeared to be shifting and moving. Music. Unsure of what to do, Leona set the egg in the center of the flagstones and stepped away from it. Music. As they watched, the ink grew brighter and the hall was suffused with a golden light. Leona pulled off her muffler, exclaiming that she felt rather warm, and Jamie realized he was feeling quite hot as well. Distinctively stepping back farther from the egg, they realized that the hall had begun to drip water all around them. The battle of running water began to fill their ears. It was melting. Music. Without discussion, they pushed the doors of the castle open and rushed outside across the moat. Turning to look at the castle, they saw an incredible transformation taking place. The structure was mounting from the center outward, and a bright light was shooting up into the twilight like a geyser or a fire. With a low rumble, Santa caved in, splashing water into the frozen moat. To their great amazement, fiery orange and red bird soared upward and paused, flapping its wings over the remains of the ice castle. With each downward motion, it sent rivers of warm water outward, thawing everything inside the moat and flooding the area around it. Jamie could see that they had to get off the mountain as soon as possible. As the great phoenix swooped and called out over their heads, he decided to take a risk. Dropping his heavy skates on the ground, he told Leona to hold tight to him. She complied, linking her arms around his neck. Then, as the beautiful bird swooped close above their heads, he grabbed it by the feet, holding on as tightly as he had done to the frosty white eagle on the way up the mountain. Music. Without protest, the bird carried them into the air. Fragile ice palace vanished behind them, and the ground melted away and caved in. Triumphant phoenix soared across the mountain top and plunged downward, heading straight for the village below. The slippery mountainside sped by, dripping rivulets of water downhill. The wind in their faces was powerful and filled with heat. Music closed their eyes tightly, winning themselves simply not to let go. Music. Then in an instant their feet were brushing the ground, and they released the bad, falling in a heap in the clearing at the foot of the mountain. The birds searched upward, fantastic glowing orb in the night sky, and vanished into the distance with a cry. A shower of sparks dispersed in its wake, drifting to the ground like a meteor shower. Jamie and Leona lay in the wet snow, facing upward, as they tried to catch their breath. Then, after a few incredulous moments, They turned their faces to each other and laughed. They had done it. Leona was free and Jamie was home. The villagers had long ago given up on watching his climb, and had gone home to their haves and their warm dinners. Nobody was there to see him trudging homeward in the moonlight, with an unfamiliar young lady on his arm. It was a great surprise to his parents, therefore, when their son made a miraculous reappearance on their doorstep. Music. His mother was so beside herself, but she spilled the stew. By the time everyone had awakened the next morning, the world had transformed. A warm, steady rain was showering the entire land, and the snow and ice had almost completely melted. It was a whole day before the water stopped coming and the sun came out. When the first warm rays of spring were felt after so many years, the village rejoiced as the weeks and months went on. Children came to know the seasons. They finally understood the green color of the grass, and the many colorful shades of spring, summer, and autumn. Small, cheerful birds sang their happy melodies from every treetop. Prosperity returned to the village, and when Jamie asked Leona, the Winter Princess, to marry him, he was able to give her beautiful bouquet of flowers in every color of the rainbow.